Welcome back to the Donor Conceived Queen channel, your go-to destination for all things related to the world of donor conception. I'm your host, Steph, and today we have a very special guest that you won't want to miss. But before we dive into today's interview, make sure to hit that subscribe button and tap that notification bell so you never miss an update from our community. Now let me introduce you to Lori, an incredible individual who discovered her unique identity as a donor-conceived person in her 30s. Unraveling her own story, Lori made a surprising revelation that her grandmother is a talented artist. Can you believe it? It's an awe-inspiring journey that you simply can't afford to miss. But Lori's story goes beyond discovering her artistic roots. It sheds light on a crucial issue: the importance of protecting the rights of donor-conceived individuals through legislation. Our health is our wealth, and we all deserve to know our biological parents and have access to our family's medical history. It's a topic that affects so many lives, and together we can make a difference. On this channel, we aim to create a supportive community of donor-conceived individuals and their families. We believe in sharing stories, raising awareness, and advocating for laws that protect our rights. Your engagement and support means the world to us, so please remember to give this video a thumbs up and leave your thoughts in the comments down below. How did you find out that you were donor conceived? Let's hear the story.
Okay, so I'm gonna go back about 5 years now. I was it was 2018. It was both like the best and most difficult year ever. I was getting remarried. I was like buying a new house. Everything was coming together. I found out I was pregnant, and then we get married. And unfortunately, like a month or so later, I lost the baby. So this was like the end of August. I was looking for anything to distract me. And I saw a friend put something on her social media with like her color wheel and how she was so excited. 23andMe told her she was all these different, nationalities or whatever. I was like, oh, let me do that. And she had like a coupon code, right? So it's like, it's a no-brainer. It's an easy way for me to get a distraction. So I sign up for it. I did not realize, I was very naive, that 23andMe also would tell you relatives. So I was thinking they're going to tell me, what nationalities I was. And I grew up thinking from my mother's side, Irish, Scottish, from my dad's side, Norwegian. And there was like this weird little confusion if, maybe there was some kind of scandal at some point, and there might have been a little Swedish that got in there. So I'm thinking, hey, we could put this to rest. Let me do this test and confirm once and for all. So I do the test and it comes back all different colors. So I'm like, wow, this is crazy. It's not like just the 3 or 4 colors I would have expected. It's literally a rainbow. So I'm like, this is so cool. So I take a screenshot of it and I share it with my cousins on my dad's side. And my dad's sister was significantly older than him. So her children, my cousins, are almost like aunts in age to me. So I share it with her and her daughter, who's closer in age to me. And they're like, well, that's not what our results show. And I'm like, that's weird. They share with me theirs, and theirs is Scandinavian across the board. Theirs makes sense. So I was like, that's so weird. But in the meantime, I'm super excited because I find out I'm part Jewish, I'm part Cuban, Spanish, like all these cool, what I considered exotic things compared to what I like grew up as. So when I tell my parents this, and again, I'm just thinking like there's no relationships that are going to be discovered at this point. So I'm thinking, this is really cool information. My dad's sister always used to tease him, and he was a lot younger, like I said. So she would say, oh my God, he's adopted. He's adopted. And we always blew it off like, oh yeah, he's adopted, like as a joke though, because we thought it was just big sister teasing him. So when I got these results, my first thought was, wow, he must have really been adopted. And I called my parents to tell them, oh my God, guys, guess what? We're, and my parents' reaction was very strange to me. my mom got like angry and was sort of like, I don't believe in this stuff. This is absolutely not true. There's no way this is right. I don't believe in this. And my father, who's he doesn't really like, he's a gentler person by nature. He was just kind of like, nah, I don't believe in this stuff, sort of like that. So kind of like just brushed it off. Like, so I just thought, okay, like that was kind of weird, but whatever. I mean, it's here. And in my head, I'm thinking like, I'm a nurse. I have a bachelor's degree in science that they paid for. So like, I'm thinking to myself, how do you pay for a bachelor's in science degree and then say DNA doesn't exist? It's not real. These are also educated people as well. Both of my parents are retired teachers. So these are people with like multiple levels of college education too. So it's like, but anyway, I kind of ignored it. And then that was probably about like late September, October of 2018. Christmas time, my family, my brother and his wife and their 3 girls come up to visit us for the week for Christmas, and they're staying at my house. And I was so excited to find out I was part Jewish that I decorated like a little corner of my house for Hanukkah.
Aw.
No, like there was no religion behind it whatsoever. I just was always fascinated with the culture because I had worked with a lot of Jewish people who taught me all different things about their culture and everything. So I thought it was really exciting for me. So I decorated, I said I was 16% Jewish, so I decorated 16% of my house for Hanukkah. But Christmas everywhere here. We went out to lunch one day with the whole family, and my niece, who I guess at the time was probably about like 7, she's a very bright girl, and she says, and now she's from North Carolina, like I think she knows one Jewish person only. And so she also thought this was really cool. So she's sitting at the table and she says in front of everybody, Aunt Lori, if you're Jewish, that must mean I'm part Jewish too. And before I could even respond, or anybody could, my mother was like, oh my gosh, don't be ridiculous. No. Again, very angry. And I was like, where's that coming from? But I just kind of like was like rolling my eyes because I'm thinking to myself, 7-year-old can figure it out. Like,
Yeah.
But okay. So now fast forward a couple days, it's like, I think December 29th of that year, my brother and the kids all leave. And my son, at this time, I only had my son and he's in bed. So it's like finally peace in the house. My husband and I are just like sitting on the couch, winding down, enjoying the quiet. And I get like the alert on my phone. And I look and it says, I have a message on 23andMe. So I'm like, that's weird. Let me go look at it. And I had gotten like messages prior to this from like, 6 cousins and all this crazy stuff. So I kind of just like didn't put any weight into this. But this message said, 23andMe says you're my sister. And I was just like, wow, I've always wanted it. Again, I'm like naive of what this means. And I'm like, I'm a sister. How cool.
Yeah.
Then it sunk in. They're a parent with this person, right? So we start putting the pieces together, and she did not know. We end up finding out down the line she also was donor conceived, but at the time neither one of us knew this. So we're trying to put the pieces together, and the only thing we could come up with was that her dad I guess he had like stepped out on her mom a couple times, so it wasn't an unusual thought that he may have had an affair with my mom. So now we're past my dad's adopted phase. And now I've kind of come to the conclusion, because she said that the heritage that her DNA test showed was pretty close to what she grew up believing she was. So we were like, it has to be your dad then. And so now we're thinking, oh my God, my mom cheated on my dad and had an affair. But like, to think about that, my mom is so, I don't even know the word, like, she doesn't even curse, and to think about she could have had an affair and cheated on my dad was so far-fetched. But I was like, hey, I mean, what other, thoughts do we have here?
Yeah.
So this is what we're assuming it is. So now we're trying, and also she didn't live here any longer, but I live in New York. I live on Long Island. And at the time she was born on Long Island in New York as well. So it made sense. She was here. She was local. So we're trying to figure out the connections and whatever. And I'm like, I got to go to my mom about this, and her father had passed away. So we couldn't ask him. And her mom was not, you couldn't talk to her either. So I was like, well, I got to go to my mom about this, but I need more evidence because clearly this didn't go over well when I first approached her with this stuff. So I decided to do Ancestry so that I could have 2 tests and let's see what they show. So I get the results back. Now this is like all taking place over a few months. So by now we're probably like springtime of 2019. I get these results back and my sister had agreed to do them also. But she was like a couple days behind me. So I get the results back and I see like there's more siblings. And I'm like,
Wow.
I reach out to my sister. I'm like, there's more of us. Like, what is this? What's
Wait,
going
how
on?
many siblings did you have?
At that point, we just found 2 more.
Okay.
I've heard of like these pods where there's like hundreds.
Oh,
so
yeah, of course.
I feel like we're a little bit better off.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
Still, it was kind of shocking. I grew up with like 1 brother. So,
Same. Mm-hmm.
So now we find there's another sister and there's a brother. So now me and my sister are like, this is strange.
Mm.
Maybe her dad was a sperm donor. Because again, her, like all the heritage and everything, nationalities that she was seeing were pretty close to what she grew up believing she was. So we're like, it has to be her dad. So we speak to these 2 other accounts. So one of them is a sister who has known she was donor conceived since, I guess, like early teenage years, I think it was. And then the other account was for a brother the account was run by his mother, though, which was strange. But she, I guess, was trying to find information out about the donor to pass it on because it was anonymous.
Yeah.
So I guess that was her thought. So the mom like reached out as soon as she saw this connection and she was like, what do you guys know about the donor? And now again, like we're like, well, it's her dad. It's my sister's dad is the donor. What are you talking about? Oh. She was a little aggressive. I mean, like we had this bomb kind of go off in our laps at that point of like, I was just discovering my dad wasn't my dad, And she was just very kind of like forceful in her way. She was telling us facts, but I don't think we were ready to hear them yet. So it wasn't done in like a sensitive way. Like she knew the information because she's the one who went through it. She's like, this is the doctor we used. This is where the office is located. They were using NYU med students. Like she knew all the details.
Wow.
So then and we were like, no, we think it's her dad was our sperm donor. And she's like, well, was your dad a med student in, the early 80s? And she's like, no. And she's like, well, then it wasn't your dad. Like she was insistent and it was a little brutal, but it was truth. And then our other sister who had known since she was, in early teen years was able to kind of validate everything this other woman was saying, but in a gentler way.
Yeah.
And, now me and my sister, who I've known for like 6 months at this point, and I don't even know her. We've had like one phone conversation and a bunch of like texts, are like, oh my God, like now another bomb gets dropped because we thought we had it figured out. And now we're like, well, shit, like how many more are there, like siblings, and what else happened with this? Like, how did this all come to be, So that was sort of how I discovered at that point. But I had gone to my parents a few times. And well, I'd gone to my mom, not my dad, because I thought my mom had an affair. So I was trying to protect my dad initially. I'd gone to my mom a few times, and I was told she didn't know why these results were showing this way. It didn't make any sense. She did admit going to this fertility clinic. However, she said it was because they had had miscarriages and they had had difficulty trying to conceive. And so a friend told them about this office, but she never consented or agreed to using a sperm donor. I mean, it went as far as for her to even say, maybe my dad did this behind her back. Like he was duping her, which I mean, I have so many emotions related to all of that. At the time, like, I think I knew she was being dishonest,
Mhm.
but I didn't know how to like navigate through that. My sister that we discovered, like my second sister, somehow she was able to like dig in and figure out relatives. And by doing that, she was able to, we reached out to numerous people that were listed as like our aunts or a cousin, but we were either not getting responses or people were not very kind. I think we were reaching out looking for something. I'm not really sure. But it ended up being, we were related to people that were, I mean, I wouldn't say they're like celebrities, but they were common, names that were in the public eye over history.
Oh.
So, which was cool. So
Yeah.
to discover that though, it made it a little easier to reach out. So we find this grandmother, who is a Latina artist, like a famous an American artist. And so her name is Sita Gomez, and she's like, I mean, amazing. I could say that now. But at the time, we're looking at her bio and stuff, and she's like an elderly woman. We don't want to like scare her, right? So let's write her a letter, like an old school letter, So my sister sends her a letter and just kind of explains the situation. And, we were so used to being shot down by people that I don't think we had any expectations of what was going to come of this. But also during our search, we came to find out, we thought we knew who our dad was, our sperm donor, whatever was, but he had passed away. And not only that, his brother had also passed away. So they passed away at very young ages. So now that starts to like build up all these concerns of like, in their 40s, both of them, I think maybe even one of them was in his late 30s. So it's like, that's our age now,
Yeah.
Very concerning. Like, what is it? What's in our family? But then we've got this grandmother who's, she's like 80 something years old at that point. Mm-hmm. Anyway, we send the letter, she gets the letter. And she calls my sister right away because my sister left her phone number. And she's like a grandma, like she instantly became our grandmother. She's just been so warm, welcoming, filling in all the details, which has been like the saving grace for this entire situation, to be honest. It's been pretty crazy. But these siblings that I discovered, and the one, the brother whose mom like ran his account, he's like distally involved. Like he's really not into all this. It's just not his thing, which is fine. My sister, the other sister who's known since she was young, is the one that has spoken to him the most out of all of us. But I've had like one conversation with him. It was, it's just not the same as like my sisters. And then we actually, just to fast forward slightly, we last year found out, we found another brother.
Oh.
So he popped up out of nowhere. And it's kind of interesting. I don't know if you believe in this stuff, but my sister really does. She had gone to a psychic, and the psychic was like, oh, there's 5 of you. And she's like, no, there's only 4 of us. She's like, no, there's 5 of you. And she's like, okay, whatever, lady, And then I'm not even kidding, a week later, she shared that with us. And then a week later, I got the alert that there was a 5th one. So as of now, there's 5 of us that we know about. 2 boys, 3 girls. We are all within. So I'm born in January of 1982. And the youngest is my sister, who's born in February of 1983. So within almost like a year, 13 months, we are all that closely related, like just a few months apart. I had no idea there was such a world of people like me out here.
Yeah.
And started looking on social media and stuff like that. And there was like support groups and things like that. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is like a really common thing, which shocked me, but
yes,
helped me. Sad it's like that, but it helped me, to know I wasn't alone in front of people. So
yeah, same. I'm so happy that we met too, Lori.
Oh, I know. It's amazing how, where life takes you. And I was really struggling with this information. I mean, my parents, they still will not discuss this with me. They continued to lie to me until I like literally lost my mind. It was, I guess it was 2 Christmases ago now. on my mother. I just like, I couldn't take it anymore. And I just like let it out. Now, at this point, my dad had kind of vaguely admitted to it, but didn't want to talk about it. But he said, you know, we couldn't have kids. We had to use a donor. But can we keep this between the three of us? That was like his words. And I was just like, okay, you know?
Yeah.
I mean, by that point, I had told like a very small amount of people because I felt like I was like this dirty secret that for some reason there was so much shame around my conception that it like can't be talked about. So like I shouldn't talk about it either. But meanwhile, I was living almost like this double life because I had these siblings and family that I was getting closer to, and I couldn't even talk about them with the people that I would talk to on a daily basis. And it's like how hard that is to filter your speech. You know what I mean? Like, because in normal conversation, you could like something could pop up and it's very easy to be like, oh yeah, my sister did something like that, or my sister goes there, you know, whatever.
Yeah.
So I oh careful. I'd have to like filter and process everything so that I wouldn't like out anybody. And it was really only, I guess, like, I don't know, a year or two ago, I started being like, I'm done with the secret. Like I started talking more about it. And I had this blow up on my mom where even at the end of that conversation, when I was just like, you know, you're a liar, whatever, she still ended the conversation. No, the God's honest truth. And I will never forget that direct quote. The God's honest truth, this is a religious woman, is I don't remember. And I literally like just looked at her. And in that moment, I think I came to terms with like, she's just, this is hopeless. You know, I have two options. I can continue to fight this battle, or I accept what went on and move forward with my life, because I cannot fight this all the time. She's still denying it. Like my father even admitted to it. Yeah. It was just like, I thought I had a better relationship with my parents. That's been the most difficult piece to this whole thing, because the people that I thought I could trust with everything, like I think at some point it's been 5 years throughout all this. I don't know where in the journey, but like my father did tell me step by step exactly what happened. This is where the doctor was. I mean, he's telling me like the street address of this doctor. Like he knew every detail. And
was
he gave
the same details that were given to you previously?
It was accurate.
There you go.
So had I gone to him early on and really, Dad, I need you to be honest with me, maybe, you know, I wouldn't have suffered for a few more years. But I thought I was protecting my mom because I was thinking she did something without my dad's knowledge to get pregnant, you know? And I would be sensitive to that. And like, it's like, little did I know, me trying to protect them, trying to help them and not do anything that would disrupt their life was completely disrupting my life.
Yes.
Completely. Like in capacity, you know, and like, I think people on the outside that don't experience this, they just think it's like, okay, like, who cares? Move on, get over.
Yeah.
And like, no, this is like every fiber of my being has been affected by this information, by finding this out at 36 years old, for one, then being lied to about it for another, you know, now we're going into 5 years. We don't talk about it, but at least now they've admitted it to me. So I'll say being lied to about it for like another 4+ years.
It's a long time.
It's a long time. And the craziest part is like, I'm navigating all of this with my siblings, right? Yeah. But they're strangers. So like,
you don't know who to trust anymore. You can't even trust your own parents, and you have to trust these complete strangers that you've met on the internet.
That are your siblings, though.
Yeah,
like,
of course.
And but it's like they're stranger siblings, you know?
Yeah.
So like they're new people. So even though you share all this DNA and like similarities, you're not, you know, you don't know them.
Yeah.
That was tough. That was a tough reality. But at that moment when she said that to me, the God's honest truth is I don't remember it. That was when I knew, let it go.
Yeah.
It's time for me to focus on me.
Yeah.
And that was again, that was 2 Christmases ago. So that was about a year and a half ago or so, give or take. And that's what I've done since then. I've really made it a point to take care of me, because nobody was like walking me through this process and this information, and it is major. And it flipped me. I mean, like, it affected my mental health tremendously in so many ways. First of all, coming to the, understanding of like what all this is, being donor conceived and having a non-paternal event and like all this stuff. But then also add to it, like, your parents lying to you about something so serious. It's not like, oh, where'd you go to dinner last night? It's like,
right.
it's everything
50% of you.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's just been crazy. And then, there's a lot of positive things that come from discovering the new family. And I just try really hard to focus on those things. I mean, because, it can really drag you down, take you to ugly, dark places when you focus on all the negativity. So I started my Instagram page fairly recently, Journey to Me, JOURNE to ME. This is like a journey for me to really figure out who I am at this point.
Yeah.
I'm 40 years old. Like, it sucks that I'm just getting here now, but you know what? I'm doing it. And by creating that sort of second page, it's not my personal page. I have my personal page where I share like the pictures of the kids and like, the fun stuff.
Yeah.
And that's my outlet where I can really expose myself, and I'm not afraid to do it anymore.
Good.
I can share things I've gone through, and if it helps somebody else, like, I'm all for it, because I could have used that when I was going through all this. That's why, like, when you reached out and asked if I'd be interested in this, yes, let's do it. Like, yes. I am all getting the word out there. Let's help as many people as we can. It sucks. And it sucks to think you're going through all of it alone.
And you're not, because you're not alone.
You're not.
Yes.
But when you first discover all this, like, I literally had no idea how common this was.
Same.
And it wasn't until I really started digging and looking for help that I was like, oh my God, there's like worlds of us out there. And literally, it's the world. It's not just in America.
Yeah.
But that's the only thing that, I just go to those pages when I really need extra support. And I look at people similar to me to help. So I thought, you know what? If I can share my story and it can help somebody else the same way, I'm going to do it, and it helps me in turn,
Yeah.
I mean, my job, I'm a nurse. So like, my job is like helping others. So it's like, it's just in me to want to help other people. It fulfills my soul too.
Thank you for sharing your story, Lori. You are so inspiring, and I'm so proud of you for being able to make your own Instagram page to start sharing your story, because you've inspired me.
Thank you. Yeah. I just want to help. I just want other people to know they're not alone. It's the biggest, most important piece of the whole thing.
Thank you, Lori.
Thanks.
Big hug. I feel so much better to be able to share our story, and hearing yours has so many similar aspects to it, like with my parents not being able to admit the truth, and you really want to trust and love your parents. But when you find out you're donor conceived, it really just severs all of that for you. And then you're just floating, just looking for information. And it just feels like no one's there to hold your hand and take you through the steps. And you have to figure it out by yourself.
Yeah, you're wandering alone.
Yeah.
And the people who, have guided you so far through life, and most likely are the ones who taught you how important honesty is.
Yes.
Now become like the biggest liars you've ever. Listen, I'm trying my best to navigate relationships with them and to keep them in my life as much as I can, but it's not easy,
Okay.
because there's just all these emotions that are like held up inside they're hurtful.
Yeah.
And I think until they can get help and get comfortable talking about this stuff with me, maybe that would help. I don't know. I don't know. Maybe I like to think that at 36 years old, when I had discovered this, if they had just admitted it at that point, maybe I could have looked past what, the 36 years prior, because maybe I could understand. The doctor told them no one will ever know, and you don't have to worry about this, and da 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 da. Maybe. But then to have continued this lie for so many more years, like while I was struggling, like
Mhm.
I have a hard time with that, and thank God I have my husband and my kids, and I do have a few friends that are, all in with me, but I lost friendships because of this, because of all the side effects of what this does to you. It
Same.
sucks.
Mhm. It's people like you that inspire me to continue doing what I'm doing and to continue sharing and advocating for donor conceived people's rights. How is your medical history going forward after finding out you're donor conceived? So now you probably you're a nurse, so you know how important DNA is.
It's like something I dread when you go to the doctor and you have to fill out the forms for a few reasons. So for one, which maybe isn't as important, but you know how they ask you like what race you are?
Yeah.
This is a simple thing. I mean, like, I'm white, I look white, but then I know that I'm Spanish and I'm Cuban. And so it's like, what box do I check anymore? Am I considered Hispanic now? Like, it's
Yeah.
a thing, and it really doesn't matter in the grand scheme of things, but it's, something else that triggers you.
Yes.
But as far as the medical history, yeah. My father, we found out, my biological father passed away from multiple sclerosis in his 30s. So, multiple sclerosis hasn't been proven to be hereditary as of yet. However, it's an autoimmune condition, and autoimmune conditions are hereditary. I have had a lot of health issues my whole life. And that's another piece of this that really bothers me, because I think back on if my parents had shared that maybe they didn't know all of my medical history, maybe other things could have been looked into earlier and I wouldn't have had to suffer.
Yes.
Another piece of it in 2017, so this is before I knew I was donor conceived, my mother had breast cancer. And I went through everything with her, I found her the best surgeons. I did everything with her. Once all of that was done and she was in remission, and she has been, knock on wood, in remission. I sat with the doctor and her at the last appointment, and I said, so tell me, what do I need to do now? Because my mother had breast cancer. Do I need to do anything specific or special or whatever? And she said, well, I guess I was 35 at the time. So it was before the normal time when you would start, doing mammograms and whatnot. She's like, the only way I would say you're a higher risk at this point, because my mom was old too, was if it was on both sides of the family, any kind of female reproductive cancer. And so my father's sister had passed away from uterine cancer, I want to say not too long before that. So I shared that with the doctor, and she said, because of having that on both sides of, my family, I should go through all these tests and get all this testing done. And so I did. And it was this huge pit of anxiety when I'm going through all these tests. So, thank God everything came out okay. But I think about that too. If they had just shared it, spoken up sooner, I really wasn't at high risk as I thought I was. And they could have saved me that emotional distress of going through all the testing and stuff, not knowing what was going to come out of it, Yeah, I mean, I'm still seeing doctors, trying to figure out, because autoimmune conditions take forever to diagnose. I don't know if I have one officially. I mean, as a nurse, I've kind of diagnosed myself with things, but officially, I'm not officially diagnosed with anything. But with my grandmother sharing her information, she also has an autoimmune condition. So, likelihood of it being passed down is, strong. And I have children, and should know that also.
Like you said, this information could have been given to me when my child was in a hospital and could have helped her from needlessly suffering as well. So I feel your pain with this.
I'm sorry to hear that. Yeah. It's serious. The right to your medical history is a basic right. I mean,
yes.
if for no other reason And there are plenty of reasons why it should be. But if for no other reason, that alone should be a reason why it needs to be shared.
Yes.
Like, you can't wait for people to, you
Mhm.
can't wait for adulthood to tell people, or for them to just discover that everything they thought they were isn't real, isn't true. Like, you can't do
Right.
that.
No, you can't. I mean, you can, and then you'll find out the consequences later.
A lot of problems. We'll put it that way.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you, Lori, for sharing.
There's been positives to it aside from just the family. I've always been very artistic, very creative. I love to paint. I love to draw. No idea where that came from until I discovered my grandmother, and she's like a famous artist. And
Yes.
I see now, and I'm like, oh my God, like that's where that came from. And genetic mirroring, like, you go into, these worlds that you thought you were all alone with, but you discover you have connections to people from your past, even going into medicine. So my biological father was in med school. Unfortunately, his MS flared up and he didn't get to finish. But his grandfather, so my great grandfather was like a world-renowned physician who helped develop like the artificial heart,
Whoa.
many ago. And he did research back then, which has led us to where we are now, where organ donation is possible.
That's awesome.
So like, have those types of connections, like, oh, I went into medicine for a reason. There's a reason I was drawn into it.
Yes.
That part's really cool. Like, I can kind of relate to that because my family that I grew up with, they were all teachers. So like, that wasn't my field. I didn't fit in with that. So when I look back at pictures, like, I see these pictures of me, like white hair, and, they were like dark hair. They just look so different than me. But I always felt like I thought I was adopted when I was younger, because I always felt like I didn't fit in. And I would, they're, oh, you weren't adopted. You weren't adopted. Well, no, I guess they weren't lying to me. I wasn't adopted, but
Yeah.
I remember as a young child looking for proof that I was in my mother's arms as like a newborn, because I just was like, I just didn't believe it. And I would look through, try and find pictures and like my baby book, like, just so something from a very, very young age was in me questioning where I fit into this family.
Mm-hmm. Same.
Yeah, I feel like I hear that a lot, and I have one brother who he had no idea at all.
Wow.
So not that is like the defining moment. Not everybody has that, but I've heard that a lot of, donor conceived people really always had that feeling like something's not right here.
Mm-hmm. I had that same feeling.
Yeah, it's tough.
It is.
It's tough to grow up like in a family where you feel like you're a stranger with them,
Yes.
and not understand why.
Tell me about your relationship with your donor conceived siblings.
We talk all the time.
Okay.
I have met the four of us that are in communication. I told you there's that one brother who's like not really into it. I've met all of them. We're going actually. So my grandmother is an artist. Like I said, she has a big show coming up.
Ooh.
And we're all, some of my siblings live in Florida, so they're flying in. And then I'm in New York. My grandmother's upstate New York. My other sister's in Connecticut. So like, we're driving up, and this will be the first time all four of us and my grandmother are together.
Wow.
But there have been multiple times that my two sisters and I have been with my grandmother before, or even just one sister with my grandmother, or, like my family. I don't want my children to not know about this part of their life.
Yeah.
So like back around Christmas, we went upstate for a weekend just to like rent a house and whatever. And my brother from Florida was up. This was my first time meeting him. And he was up with his son, who happens to be the same age as my son.
Wow.
And my sister in Connecticut has a son also the same age as my son.
Wow.
It's just incredible. And you start to think about how, like, my sister and I, we would have gone through our pregnancies together if we had known about each other then.
Yeah.
And you kind of like get sad about that stuff. But now we're doing everything we can to, foster a relationship with the kids so that the next generation, it just lives on. They're your cousins. And I don't want my kids to ever think differently about them. They are family. We actually did like a podcast a while back with like all four of the siblings, and my one brother was like brand new to the crew and he was all in. I was like really impressed. It was just last year and I was impressed. I was like, you're all in, and good for you, because I was not ready to do that in like the first couple of months of my discovery. But he's been great. He's been super great. And he had 3 sisters to sort of who went through it, so we could kind of like walk him through all of it in a gentle way and try to help him like understand it all and settle into this new crazy life. Yeah, they've been a blessing. Having my family, the new family, has been like, I would say, the saving grace for all of this. It's been like the best thing about all of it, discovering these new people and the instant connection with these new people, which was interesting because again, they were strangers, but they were your siblings. But from the moment I had the first conversation with the first sister I discovered, it never felt awkward, ever. It wasn't like talking to a stranger. It was like picking up with like a friend you just hadn't talked to in a couple months or something. It was really cool. Just an instant bond like that. It was like,
I really love this story so much. It makes me so happy and hopeful for others to finally connect with their siblings, because I know there's a lot of donor conceived people who are just not into it. And I'm like, do it. It would.
I know. I don't know why people are like that. Like, it's even like my one brother, he's just not interested. And one of the pieces that I discovered with this, and one of the questions I did ask my parents was, well, how did you have my brother, the one I grew up with? And they did tell me it was the same process. So my brother and I are not super close. So what I did was I said, you need to tell him. This was, of course, years after I found out. So now, like, they clearly didn't learn anything from what they went through with me. Yeah. So I said, you need to tell him. And then they lived in North Carolina. So they were like, oh, we want to tell him in person. So, okay. So I gave them a few months because like they were going to be seeing them. And then they came back from the trip and I just knew they didn't say anything. And so I was like, you know what? I'm going to tell him. But him and I are not super close. So I went to my sister-in-law, his wife, and she knew. I stopped sharing details with her, but she knew early on what I had discovered. So she kind of knew pieces of it. So I just kind of approached it with her like, hey, did my parents talk to you guys about anything when they were down there about like the DNA stuff? And she was like, you mean yours, or is there some new stuff? I was like, no, there's some new stuff. Can you just like ask my brother? Like, and she's like, no, they didn't talk about anything. Ooh. And I told her, I was like, listen, I'm going to tell you this because you know what? You've got three kids. Those are my nieces. And if for no other reason, I can't live with that, lying on my shoulders. Like, you guys need to, and you can do with whatever you want with the information. Yeah. And so I told her, and he's the same way as my parents. He doesn't want to discuss this. To my knowledge, it's something he has brushed under the rug and just doesn't want to know anything about it. He has never come to me. I told her, tell him to come to me. Again, we're not super close, but we talk, I mean, yeah. But he just he's not into it. He doesn't want to hear about it, doesn't want to talk about it. And she feels like, we have 3 kids. Maybe we should talk about this, but that's their decision. But I just, I knew I couldn't live with that secret, knowing that and not sharing it, because I know what that did to me. So not everyone will agree with that, though. A lot of people have told me like, oh, you shouldn't have said anything. But I couldn't.
You did the right thing.
Yeah, I mean, I think so. Thank you. I did think it over long and hard before I did it, but I couldn't do that to him. Even though we don't get along, I don't want to say we don't get along, but even though we're not close, I just didn't feel like I could put him through what I went through.
I'm proud of you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for meeting with me today, Lori. And I hope that, by sharing our stories, we can help others to feel more accepted. And this is our new normal.
Who watches, I'm an open book at this point. So feel free, if you want to reach out to me anonymously, I'm more than willing to help you walk through this crazy path.
And I will put Lori's Instagram down below. Make sure to follow Lori. She's an amazing Instagrammer and donor conceived person who is advocating for donor conceived people's rights.
Yes.